homicide.
July 22nd, 1994.
O.J. Simpson, the story that won't go away.
Developments in the O.J. Simpson murder case. Details.
Once again, the big story today is the O.J. Simpson case.
For the past month, it has dominated the media.
The state versus O.J. Simpson. An alibi under attack.
Miles of newsprint, screaming headlines, countless covers.
The frenzy surrounding the Simpson murder case continues at a fever pitch.
High drama in Los Angeles as O.J. Simpson went to court today.
Local, network, cable TV merged into one.
And later, our electronic jury make their own case on the evidence against O.J.
And the line between tabloid and mainstream journalism has become a lot less clear.
Everyone is asking, what about the dog right now?
Well, Akita, at the time of the incident, responded extremely emotional.
Rumors have been reported as fact.
A ski mask found at the home of O.J. Simpson and drenched in blood.
Only to be knocked down.
A Los Angeles television station apologized today.
In the frenzy for exclusives, tabloids have paid for the stories of key witnesses.
He looked crazy, like a madman gone mad.
Tainting testimony and threatening to throw the case off course.
Judge Mills has disbanded the Los Angeles grand jury.
All of it raising the question, are the media undermining the right to a fair trial?
From ABC News, this is a Nightline Viewpoint. The media and O.J. Simpson. Now reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
I'd like you to take a look at the cover of the latest New Yorker magazine. A bunch of distressed bathers at a beach trying, unsuccessfully it seems, to get the attention of a lifeguard. He is absorbed in what else? The O.J. Simpson story, which he is watching on a portable television. Is someone drowning off in the direction in which the bathers are pointing? If so, the lifeguard's stand was facing in the wrong direction to begin with, but never mind. The point is as subtle as a brick. There has been a national obsession with the O.J. Simpson case, while other, potentially more important or even life-threatening issues pass unnoticed. And who is to blame? Why, who else? The media. On days like today, when O.J. Simpson was arraigned and all the networks were covering the event live again, on days like this, it is difficult to make much headway arguing about the media's diversity.
Let's go back to that moment where O.J. Simpson is faced with two charges of murder.
He pleaded absolutely 100%.
Not guilty of murdering his former wife and her friend.
At times like this, we at the networks, our affiliated stations, and the so-called tabloid news programs will end up looking very much the same. Still, there are differences, and that will be the focus of much of what we talk about tonight. Focus and wretched excess. You should know that we asked NBC and CBS to send representatives. They declined. CBS also refused to let us show you examples of their coverage. Nevertheless, we have a wonderfully diverse panel of media people and our critics whom you'll meet after Dave Marish sets the agenda for our initial discussion.
Even in a society where murder is literally an everyday occurrence, the brutal slayings of people as young and model beautiful as Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman would make news. But when the main suspect in the case is O.J. Simpson,
O.J., anything you can tell us?
Everyday news judgments go out the window. In local TV newsrooms in Los Angeles.
Friends, men and women, said they were not lovers. They were, in fact, friends.
And at the network headquarters of ABC News in New York.
Good evening. We begin with the O.J. Simpson murder case tonight, and that's what it is. In Los Angeles this afternoon, the great football legend was charged with murdering his former wife and a friend.
O.J. Simpson is a towering person in this country. And the idea that someone of his importance or his prominence would potentially be involved in a murder made it a major story.
There were so many extraordinary events, one after another consecutively, that it was almost met by disbelief by even the seasoned veterans of our news department. because the story just got more interesting and captivating as it went along each hour and of each day.
Well, if you've been following this, there are certainly stunning developments.
On the 6th day of the story, the Simpson case went from captivation to obsession.
Aaron?
Thank you, Hugh. At this moment, a car chase is going on in Southern California. At the head of that procession is a white Bronco, and inside that white Bronco, it is believed, O.J. Simpson.
At ABC, the coverage cut in on the news magazine 2020.
It was clear that something of a strange and somehow mesmerizing notion was taking place, and we had to cover it.
ABC's decision, blowing off a news magazine for a live news event, was easy. But at NBC, the scheduled broadcast was a live news event, the 5th game of the National Basketball Association Finals. NBC News Vice President Cheryl Gould says most viewers understood when the basketball coverage literally shrank to make room for the O.J. chase.
The very fact that it was such a prominent sports figure, in many ways, I think, made the decision somewhat easier, in that the very audience that was glued to the set wanting to watch the NBA was also a sports-interested and therefore sports figure-interested audience.
From this point on, the Simpson case was like a fishhook caught in the throat of American television viewers and news executives. The Simpson story not only led every network news show, morning, evening, and overnight, it dominated every news magazine show and talk show. And once O.J.'s preliminary hearing hit the courtroom, live coverage obliterated scheduled programming for hours at a time. And then one afternoon, when the hearing seemed to be getting dull, Roone Arledge made a decision he would repent.
We cut away and went to a soap opera and told people that if anything happened, we'd let them know, but we didn't think anything was going to happen the next hour. The audience immediately left us.
When there's absolutely nothing going on in the case, we still get all this hype and exaggeration and bogus reporting. It's almost as if we in the media are addicted to the story and we just can't wean ourselves from O.J. So if there's no news, hey, no problem. We just manufacture some. USA Today even ran an item about the psychological impact of the murders on Nicole Simpson's dog.
What a choice. Ratings peril if you leave the O.J. story, and if you stay with it unendingly on the air, the peril of evisceration by TV's critics. Ted?
Dave Marish, it was late yesterday evening, that I called my friend Larry King and asked him if he would come on the program tonight. Let me repay your kindness, Larry, by beginning with you and with a nasty question. How many times have you not dealt with the O.J. Simpson case over the past month?
Not many.
Any?
Yeah, we did. I guess in the past month, maybe we've done 5 shows not related.
If I put the question to you just in sort of a broad, dumb sense and say, hasn't there been anything more important than the O.J. Simpson case? Anything over the past month that
we
would
could
warrant...
make a case that everything is more important. This is just a murder trial. 2 people were killed. Rwanda's more important. Haiti's more important. Lots of things are more important, except there's never been a story like this. Not ever.
Because?
There's never been a story. We were thinking the other day, who's the most famous person ever charged with slashing his wife and another person? O.J. Simpson. What person in history has ever driven in a car of enormous fame, apparently avoiding arrest or driving somewhere, being followed by television cameras? You know what I got to thinking after you called? I said I would ask you something.
Go ahead.
Supposing you on Nightline had scheduled tonight Lady Di. She's going to give you exclusive half hour.
Not bad.
Then Hillary Clinton will debate Robert Dole on health care.
Lady Di.
We're set to go.
Lady Di in a walk.
Both of them, right? No. You got both. Larry King Live or Nightline. We got both of them. These are the shows.
Right.
At 7 o'clock, Al Cowlings calls up. I'll be there tonight at 11:30 live. I'll take phone calls. It's the only discussion I do.
Can I have Lady Di and Al Cowlings?
No. You bumped Lady Di.
You're right. All right. Now,
you bumped, and you certainly bumped the health care issue.
Tom Rosenstiel, there has been a terrific amount of criticism leveled at the media as a whole. Larry King makes an excellent point. There is a ravenous public appetite for this, And the fact of the matter is, it is one whale of a good story, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's your complaint?
What separates journalism from entertainment, what separates journalists from tabloid artists, is that our job is to tell people what happened today and what was important. The front page of the newspaper is a chart of the day's events and their by the order of their significance. We have lost sight of giving people the news in terms of its significance. We're giving it to them in terms of what we think simply is the most titillating and the most ratings-grabbing. And in doing so, we've lost the distinction between ourselves and the people that the competition that we deride most of the rest of the time.
Fred Barnes, are you prepared to acknowledge what Larry King was suggesting a moment ago, that there is something unprecedented, something unique about this particular story, not denying for a moment what Tom is saying?
Yeah, it's a great story. There's no question about that.
Not just a great story, a unique story in some respects, because yes, there have been other murder cases before, but try and remember the last time there's been someone this famous, this prominent, someone so favored by the gods.
I can't, but that does not excuse the incredible excesses that have taken place in American journalism. I mean mainstream journalism, in covering this case. Is not just wretched excess that you talked about, and what's certainly wrong is what Roone Arledge said, that we're covering O.J. Simpson because he's such an important figure, he's such a towering figure. He's not a towering figure or an important figure. He's a celebrity. And the way this has been covered is it shows how the media is obsessed with celebrities. I'm not sure the public is, but the media is obsessed with celebrities. And the problem is, in covering them, one, it gives a distorted news judgment, but secondly, the standards that people in mainstream journalism usually apply don't apply in these cases. You know, you're applying the entertainment standards, and so gossip and rumors are reported. A good example is the report that police in Buffalo suspected that O.J. had been a cocaine user.
Back when he was
back
playing.
when he was a player for the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
That's not a story you'd ever report. What police suspect doesn't matter. That shouldn't get in print. What they charge somebody with, that matters. So, the media's been terribly unfair to O.J. in the beginning. Now they're getting back by getting stories leaked from the defense. But there have been so many errors that you mentioned. But just the wretched excess is extraordinary. I haven't measured it, but I'd bet there's been more coverage on television of the O.J. Simpson case than there was of Desert Storm.
No, actually, we did measure it, and you're wrong. I was going to say at the beginning of the program, it was close. Janine Jackson, just a few seconds before we take a break, but give us your best shot.
Well, I think that valid points are being raised here. I wouldn't be here to argue that it's not a story, but I think there are fair questions to ask about whether this kind of saturation coverage, where everything else that's happening is pushed out, is really serving the public interest. It's certainly led to some frankly irresponsible and some frankly dumb stories.
Let me first of all take issue, though, with what you just said. It hasn't pushed out the coverage of everything else. What it pushed out in the live coverage was the soap operas, and as I've said publicly before, so what?
Well, nightly news was preempted in New York City, where I live, which on at least 2 occasions by live coverage, which means we didn't hear what was happening in Haiti that day, in Rwanda that day. We got live coverage on most of the networks, and the actual nightly news was preempted. I think we have to ask, at what point do what should be journalistic decisions become marketing decisions?
Reasonable question. We're going to have a number of other questions, some perhaps not quite as reasonable, but it's going to get more interesting as the evening goes along. We'll be back in just a moment.
This Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson, is brought to you by MCI.
Every year, American business wastes millions of dollars on international calls by using the wrong long-distance company. Now you don't have to waste that money. Introducing MCI's Proof Positive Worldwide. Save up to 50% off typical international calls around the world. Call by September 30th and get 1 month of free long distance. Call MCI now and put your money back in your business.
March 1991. The Kuwait oil fires had burned for 60 days. Then came equipment from a U.S. company, the world leader, Caterpillar. Because we'd come through mudslides, earthquakes, monsoons, and Arctic blizzards, we got our chance to come through a desert storm.
In Rwanda, people are dying at the rate of 1 per minute, while it seems there's about 1 new trouble spot per day. The U.S. will send help, but how many tragedies can we handle? Sunday.
Bill Morris has made a career out of bringing common sense to government. As sheriff of Shelby County, Morris helped drug-addicted teenagers by starting programs that became models for the nation called DARE. As Shelby County mayor, Morris took on welfare reform and helped over 500 families get off welfare and into jobs. And as governor, Bill Morris will be for your right to vote for a state lottery. Some call Bill Morris's approach to government leadership. He calls it common sense. Bill Morris for governor. Common sense for Tennessee.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm getting through to them. Brian, am I getting through to you? The only things that matter to them are Godzilla, basketball, and chocolate. Not that I have anything against Godzilla or basketball. Yes! Or chocolate. I drink Yoo-Hoo. It's a delicious chocolate snack with vitamins and minerals. Ready, go! It's one thing we have in common. The only thing.
99% fat-free. Yoo-Hoo, that's cool.
Live from ABC News, Washington, this is a Nightline Viewpoint. The media and O.J. Simpson. Once again, Ted Koppel.
What you try to do in reporting a story is to find 2 or 3 independent sources who can confirm the accuracy of what you're going to put on the air or into print. But when interested parties like the prosecution, the LA Police Department, or the defense in the O.J. Simpson case, when interested parties close to the case deliberately leak something to a reporter, it can sometimes be next to impossible to find someone else with access to comment. And as Dave Marish reports now, the competitive pressure, knowing that some other news agency will go with the story if yours doesn't, that pressure often leads to lousy journalism.
Dateline NBC. Tonight, minute-by-minute developments in the O.J. Simpson murder case.
The state versus O.J. Simpson. An alibi under attack.
5 years from now, what people are going to remember is some of the breathtakingly bad reporting, whether it's the bogus KCBS videotape of the prosecutor that turned out to be off by a mere 12 hours, whether it's the altered Time magazine cover, whether it's the reenactments on A Current Affair. I think the entire reputation of the journalism business is taking a hit in this O.J. Simpson story.
We made sure, we talked to all of our crews in the field and said that we want to make sure that we're very careful with this story because obviously it has a lot of tabloid elements.
Los Angeles News Director Jeff Wald says he knew from the beginning the O.J. Simpson case was full of potential pitfalls. But he says he was confident when his team beat the competition to what was reported as an important clue in the killings.
New physical evidence has also surfaced, specifically a ski mask found at the home of O.J. Simpson and drenched in blood.
We had someone working very close to the investigation that has been a informant of ours, a source of ours for many, many years before this even took place. There was no reason to doubt the accuracy of the information.
No reason until...
If there is a ski mask with blood stains, we would like to be able to examine that today.
If it is not in what has been produced to him, then we do not have anything like that.
So are you saying that there is no ski mask?
There is no ski mask.
I said it can't be. I immediately went back to our contact here in the newsroom that has developed that particular source, and I said, is your source absolutely, positively sure? And he made another call back to this person and came back and said, stick with it.
Jeff Wald still stands by his story, although he admits KCOP-TV's source, quote, misspoke. That bloody ski mask turned out to be a knit cap which may or may not have been bloody. And it was found not at O.J.'s estate, but at the murder scene.
Professor Rohde, thank you for joining us. Pick it up right there.
Warren Olney has reported for television stations from Washington to San Francisco and for more than a decade in Los Angeles. From his observation post at an LA public radio station, he watched the flood of O.J. stories.
The worst case was the instance where a local station claimed that it had videotape showing that the prosecutor in the O.J. Simpson case had in fact been at O.J. Simpson's estate before a search warrant had been signed by a judge. And the evidence that was used for this was time code on the videotape. It had turned out that they were 12 hours off in reading their own time code. And so a few hours after having broadcast this, they said, never mind, we'd made a terrible mistake.
But by then, this egregious error had been picked up by other news organizations, including ABC News.
There were also questions today about why prosecutor Marcia Clark was at O.J. Simpson's residence the morning after the murders were committed, and whether she arrived before a search warrant was issued.
So how can news organizations prevent unconfirmed, often inaccurate stories from echoing across the world?
It is a problem at times, but I think the public is smart enough to understand that with instant kind of coverage comes sometimes wrong information, and that when you watch the coverage and read coverage in the aggregate, in the long run you will, people correct it.
And in the short run, Jeff Wald advises his viewers, quote, to take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Ted?
Roy Black, you're a defense attorney. Tell me something. Why doesn't the judge in this case, I mean, it would seem to me that a very simple way to handle it would be to issue a gag order to the police, to the prosecution, to the defense. Why not?
The number one culprit in this case is not the news media, it's the court system in California. Those judges out there have abdicated their responsibility to see this man gets a fair trial. The judges out there should have entered an order. There's no public statements, no press conferences. We cover up the leaks. We have to protect this man's right to a fair trial. The number one culprit is not the tabloids, not the responsible press, not the TV. It's the judges who have abdicated their responsibility to see this man gets a fair trial.
Donald Ray, you are Al Cowling's attorney. I'm not suggesting you've done this, but talk about it just in general terms. The notion of leaking to the press something that will accrue to the benefit of your client. Standard procedure, isn't it?
Well, it probably is a standard procedure now, particularly in a case like this when it's already been leaked by the other side. And just to comment on something that Roy was saying, it's not only gag orders that are to stop this. I mean, because there are leaks that happen irrespective of the gag order being imposed upon the lawyer. So it's the media digging out information which is inaccurate sometimes, or even if it's accurate, is not put in the right context, which leads to some of the problems that we're having. But yes, it is true that there are occasions where, as a defense lawyer, information is leaked out. Now, there are legitimate ways to do that. You can file a motion that describes certain facts that you want the press to pick up, and you can legitimately put them in a motion. You know the press is going to read the motion, and you know that they will run with that story.
Help me with the concept here. Where does your responsibility as a defense attorney lie? Only to your client,
Only
right?
to my client.
So if you can leak something out there that may or may not even be accurate, but it accrues to the benefit of your client, you're being perfectly legitimate in what you do.
Well, there are limitations on that. The Supreme Court has recently spoken on the question of whether there can be regulations imposed upon lawyers as to what they can leak out. In California, we haven't adopted the ABA standards which would impose those kinds of limitations. So theoretically, we are in a position where we are able to leak information if we think it is the appropriate thing to do in our case.
But Dick Wald, one of the problems is that when someone leaks to you and they do it on a quasi-confidential basis where it comes to you on background or deep background, we are under an obligation then not to reveal who that person is. So no matter what the Supreme Court says, they're still covered, aren't they?
Yeah, except that in our reporting, we have adopted the attitude that if a defense counsel leaks it to us, we try to get another source. We don't report everything that we hear directly from the counsel. We try to see if there is some correctness in it, and we have been either lucky or good, and we have made very few mistakes.
It is not always that easy, though, Margaret Carlson, is it? If, for example, someone at the LAPD gives you a really juicy piece of information and that person has been a good source in the past, they may be the ones in possession of the evidence. They may be the only ones who have it. They're the only ones who can give you that information. You can't confirm it anywhere else, so what do you do with it?
Well, the competitive pressure is such that you're more likely to go with it than not in this story. But, you know, one-source journalism is a common practice now. Look at Whitewater. Look at the suicide of Vince Foster. I mean, a lot of these things aren't checked out as much as they used to be checked out. And I don't think the margin of error here is that much greater than it is in a lot of other stories that we do.
You don't?
Nope.
Except that there's so much more of the coverage.
There's just so much more, you multiply it out.
Is that a defense of what we're doing or
No.
a condemnation?
It's, no, I think that journalism as a whole has adopted some very, you know, some lowered standards. In Watergate, for instance, you needed to have 2 to 3 sources for everything. Now you need 1 source.
You got a problem. No, I think you still need 2 or 3.
You've got a
We're
live,
just not using them.
But a lot of it gets printed.
You've got a live happening. We all saw the arraignment
Also,
today. How
the
many
other
people
thing
in
is-
life have seen arraignments?
Let me just
We saw
jump,
all that.
Larry, let me jump in for 1 second. Mike Walker, you represent the National Enquirer here today. You must be rubbing your hands with glee. Here are all these respectable journalists.
Yeah.
Right? All of us sort of jumping up and down, saying the same kinds of things that you and your colleagues in the tabloid press have been saying
I
for
want
years.
to welcome, first of all, the New Yorker to the field of tabloid journalism, Jeffrey Toobin. If we had printed what Jeffrey Toobin printed in the New Yorker, there would be so much gnashing of teeth and wailing throughout the land. You know, everybody, you included, would be saying, this is terrible, this is unprincipled, there's no backup here.
I'll tell you
He
what.
needs something from the defense.
Let us take a break, and when we come back, we'll tell them what Jeffrey Toobin reported in the New Yorker, and then you can relish it a little bit more, okay?
All right.
We'll be back in just a moment.
This Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson, will continue in a moment.
Polyshades by Minwax. It's a stroke of genius. Polyshades is rich stain and polyurethane protection in one. Polyshades gives wood a beautiful protective finish in half the time. Polyshades by Minwax.
It has become very popular for automakers to imitate Lexus advertising. But apparently, that's all they've been able to imitate. Because once again, Lexus has been ranked best overall car line in initial quality. And this year, all 4 Lexus models ranked among the top 10 in initial quality, which makes this one Lexus commercial no one can copy.
So, what do you think? Dentures? If they were, think I'd let you get this close? Maybe if I'd used Efferdent. Then there'd be no stains or odor.
So effervescent, so effective.
Blueberry pie.
Your secret is safe with Efferdent.
As thousands of Haitians flee, Peter Jennings was there. Is helping Haiti worth risking American lives? Peter Jennings reporting America's Haitian Crisis, Wednesday.
There's only one place in Nashville that's given more people their start than any other. The only hospital trusted enough to deliver and care for over half the babies born in Middle Tennessee each year. And everywhere you look, our experience shows. Baptist Hospital, so much for so many.
Al Gore, Jim Cooper, our congressmen have made us proud. But who will continue this tradition? Andy Hoover. He'll work for affordable health care that ensures long-term care for everyone, for truth in sentencing so criminals do the time. And Hoover's done work days, learning from people, getting their advice. The Nashville Banner endorsed Hoover, saying he'll be energetic. Andy Hoover understands that our proud tradition in Washington begins in Tennessee. Andy Hoover, a congressman we can be proud of.
This is the new Infiniti G20, and this is Infinity's new electronic key. Now, I'm going to have to talk fast, so listen. Get out, press this, lock all the doors. If you can't remember what you just did, in which case it's going to be a long day, press this. It shows you the car is locked. On your way back, press this and open the trunk. Unlock the driver's door, unlock all the doors. And if some oddball is hanging about your car, press this. Visit your Infiniti showroom, and you can have one to play with, too. I wonder what this is for.
This ABC News Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson continues.
It seems like the press has left its old tradition of, get the facts first before you run the story. It's now get whatever sensationalism we can get, and then we'll run the story.
There's a tremendous thinning of the line. It used to be only a few years ago, there was the New York Times and there was the National Enquirer. Now that line is completely blurred.
I don't think it's a whole lot of difference. I really don't. I think they're exploiting it, you all exploiting it. That's the way I see it. Now, hard copy might be a little, how can I describe this, have rough edges, and your edges might be a little softer, but I don't see a difference.
Well, there we are. The good news, Jeffrey Toobin, is that the New Yorker is now a much livelier magazine than the staid-old magazine it used to be. The bad news is people are saying nasty things about, in particular, you and the story you wrote in this week's edition, in which quite clearly, and you were very honest about this, you were fed material by a member of the O.J. Simpson defense team. And you want to tell us quickly what the story was?
Well, the story was something that I sought out, not something that the defense came to me with. And I was told that the defense was looking into the subject of Detective Furman, and that's all I was told.
Detective Furman was one of the first officers on the scene at the O.J. Simpson mansion.
Correct. And then I went out on my own and went to the Los Angeles Superior Court and looked through the court records, and to my great surprise and delight, I learned that Detective Furman spells his name in an unusual way. So there were not many cases involving Furman, and I found 2 stories below the Los Angeles Superior Court an extraordinary court file where it was disclosed that this man, it appeared, at one time, was a racist and a deeply unstable and dangerous man. I then went back to the defense and said, what about this? And they then told me that they planned to argue that Detective Furman planted the second glove at O.J. Simpson's estate.
In other words, there were 2 blood-stained gloves, one found at the scene of the crime and another one that was found at O.J.'s estate, and obviously, if it had been planted, that would undermine what may be the strongest piece of circumstantial evidence against Mr. Simpson.
Now, Mike, who it seems has been spending too much time with the space aliens I keep reading about in the Enquirer, doesn't seem to think that that's good journalism. But what I did, and what the New Yorker did in this story, was at the highest standards of journalism and fairness and skepticism, and it was reported the way it should have been reported.
Jeffrey, we don't do stories on space aliens. May I really just say that?
I was just going to make the point, Michael.
We have many competitors who do stories about space aliens. We certainly don't. I'll give you $5,000 for every one you find.
Mike, I was just going to make one quick point, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
And that is that I think we all have to be a little bit careful because we are on your turf right now.
Yes, you are.
Yes. So why don't you talk to that point for a moment?
First of all, let me applaud Jeffrey for finding this out, although I can't quite understand. You went to them, and then you went somewhere else, and then you came back, and they told you they were doing this. It sounds to me like you got this from them, but okay, I'll take your word, and it's a coup. We would have gone with that story about Furman. It's a good story, good, solid story. But then what we would have done is we would have at least tried to construct a scenario using the very good sources that we have, particularly in Los Angeles, to try to show how this possibly could have happened. You never did. You simply said, and I'll give you the words you had from the lawyer's mouth. The lawyer talking to you said, picture this. The guy walks up and he sees these 2 gloves and he thinks, I'll take 1 glove, and he's a racist. And then he finds out that 2 other guys are going to be put in charge of the case, so he gets mad. Now he's really mad. He's going to plant that evidence and so on and so forth. I mean, you never show how this possibly could have happened. There were, what, 22 police officers there? This guy had just gotten out of bed, Furman. He arrives on the scene and he goes, hey, I know what. I don't know if O.J.'s in Timbuktu or not, but there's 2 gloves. I'm going to take one and take it away from a murder scene. I don't know if you've ever covered a murder scene, if you've ever been a police reporter. That would be pretty tough. You'd have to be a moron to do that.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's not what that story lacked. It didn't lack a theory. What it lacked was any evidence that the officer had done that.
That's right.
I mean, all you had was this case from years ago, and where the guy was perhaps exaggerating to get disability. There's no evidence that the glove was actually planted. That's
and it would have been tough, but you could have at least shown how it could have happened.
That's why it was bad journalism.
And I have to jump in and agree. That's where, to make the leap from the business about the officer and in the absence of evidence, to place that glove at the scene of the crime, I think is playing the wrong deck of cards. You're playing a wild joker that can explode and get out of hand.
The doubts expressed here were all expressed in the New Yorker story.
Indeed they were.
And with all those qualifications,
But why
and
print
with all
the
that
story? Why print
skepticism.
the story? If in the absence of concrete evidence,
because there's a difference
or better
here
evidence,
between what the government is obliged to do in a criminal trial and what the defense is obliged to do.
But does that make it right, though?
Well, it makes it relevant.
If I might jump in here, one of the things that troubles me, hey, I agree with other people. Overall, this is a big-time story, no question about it. It should have heavy-duty media attention. But this feeding frenzy, this business to rush to beat the competition, has really caused you to lower standards that I'm very troubled by from the so-called, or by the so-called mainstream media, such as you in the New Yorker magazine. You know, we hear a lot about First Amendment rights. I'm a firm believer in First Amendment rights for the media, but I think that there has to be a sense of responsibility that goes along with it. And it's not good enough to say that the rest of the world needs to be responsible, and we don't have to be.
There are two things here. One is, your point was that there are two things here, bad reporting and too much attention. To put bad reporting out of the way, there's no excuse for bad reporting, I don't care who you are. Whether there's too much attention, I mean, I guess that's what we're debating. I don't necessarily think so. I've read everything about Rwanda and Haiti. I mean, yes, probably there were times when things were preempted. There's probably a little too much, yeah, but I mean, it's a story. The people are telling us we want to read it.
Let me just, Catherine, Larry, hold on just one second, because we haven't heard from Catherine yet. Go ahead.
Well, the thing that concerns me about something like this, particularly when there is no evidence or backup to support the theories and the speculation, is an old legal saying, is that you can take the skunk out of the jury box, but you can't get rid of the smell. And once you've thrown these sort of propositions out there with no supporting information, you can't take it away. And all of those potential jurors, anyone who might serve, will walk into that jury box with that information in their head. It may never come up in trial, but they'll be thinking about it when they go back to deliberate.
You're unique on this panel in that you have both sat as a judge and are now working as a journalist. Why don't you come back for a moment to the point that I raised earlier on? I mean, why doesn't one of the judges in this case then simply slap a gag order on, because the story that Jeffrey did, as far as it went, as far as his own reporting went, was a terrific story. To be able to show that this guy had the kind of background that he did was a fascinating story. The rest of it was clearly, and indeed it was quoted as such, leaked by a member of the defense team.
Well, I have to agree with what Roy was saying. I believe is that these judges have a responsibility to take control of a case and to manage a case. And you have to look to the bench when this sort of thing hasn't been handed down. And a gag order should have occurred initially. It should occur throughout this trial. And as frustrating as it may be to reporters who will continue to get leaks and information, it is still preserving the Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial, which has got to be protected in this country. It's a fine balance.
What are judges afraid of? A bad press?
Possibly that they're going to be dealing with leaks anyway, and in the course of a trial having to concern themselves with motions for contempt or in some way impeding the progress of the trial and trying to control the attorneys. But I think most of the time judges who take the reins are relatively successful in diminishing the amount of coverage that will affect the course of the trial.
Larry, quick point, then we got to take a break.
I'm a little puzzled. Isn't there an American axiom against gag orders?
Yes.
Don't we have a First Amendment?
They're supposed to be very limited only in respect to affecting the trial itself. And unless there is a stringent standard, unless, of course, it can be demonstrated that this will prevent a fair trial,
so all
then
you have to do with a gag order is file motions. And put anything in the motion, it's my business. Correct?
Unless, of course, you ask the court to seal those particular motions.
Yeah, but Larry, what you're overlooking is that the lawyers don't have a First Amendment right to destroy a defendant's right to a fair trial under the Sixth Amendment. The news media has the First Amendment right, but when lawyers are working in the system, they're controlled by the rules of ethics.
Don't have free speech? Let me just stop you for one second.
Not in that respect, they don't.
We do have to take a break. A couple of issues have been raised sort of peripherally here, and we're going to come to them head on when we return. One of them is the issue of racism. The other one is the issue of fair trial, whether it's going to be possible to impanel a jury which will be able to render an impartial decision. We'll at least pick up on a couple of those points when we come back.
This Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson, will return after these messages.
This is a Goodyear AquaTread with a 60,000-mile warranty, and this is a bucket of water. At highway speeds, Goodyear AquaTread pumps away over a gallon of water every second, thanks to its deep groove aqua channel. Over a gallon a second. That's 396 gallons per mile. Think about it. The next time it's pouring buckets. The all-season AquaTread, only from Goodyear. We say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
Still using a full commission broker? You could be missing out on a lot. Like a broker who's available anytime you want, or state-of-the-art investment software that's easy to use. To get both, trade up to Schwab. At Charles Schwab, you can manage your investments around the clock, and Street Smart software lets you place trades, get quotes, even research stocks. And at Schwab, you'll enjoy low commissions too.
For a better way to trade up to Schwab.
This is the elegantly appointed front-wheel drive Acura Legend. And to connoisseurs of classic automotive art, this is the dinner bell that says, let the feast begin. The Acura Legend Luxury Lease, available for a limited time at your Acura dealer.
From the creators of 30-something comes a brand new show.
I think it's great. I like it. It's got things that happen. It's so true. It's right on.
That's not the same old thing.
It has to do with a lot of our lives. A lot of those things happen to you. I think it's a show that parents should watch with their children because it's real. I definitely watch it. It's not for girls only. I think guys would like it too.
I'd definitely watch it.
Yeah, it's a good show. I thought it was very well done.
My So-Called Life, premiering Thursday, August 25th on ABC.
This is going to be the big show.
Avis Car Sales is loaded with 94 models. A wide selection of like-new, used, previously rented vehicles are available at unbelievable savings. And the one price plan means no haggling. Avis Car Sales also has bank financing available for your car. You'll find just the right car, choosing from Buick, Plymouth, Dodge, Ford, Pontiac, Nissan, and Toyota. Avis Cars are driven for dependability, and Avis Car Sales wants to sell you a car. Avis Car Sales, 609 Thompson Lane.
KFC is bringing it home. Delicious chicken delivered right to your door. Your choice of 3 KFC favorites. Give us a ring. We'll bring it home. KFC. We do chicken right to your door.
Just one phone call and a free 2-liter Pepsi is on its way to you when you buy 12 pieces of chicken or 6 quarters of the Colonel's Rotisserie Gold Chicken with 2 large side items and 4 biscuits delivered just $12.99. Plus a bonus 2-liter Pepsi free. Call KFC today.
Americans need to look within themselves and wonder, why do we have such an insatiable appetite for the sensationalism? I mean, I'm guilty of it. I watched the trials. I couldn't turn it off.
Yes, it has been excessive, and I believe that the media has proven O.J. as being guilty before a trial has come about. I mean, it's sad. I feel that the media will put more emphasis on the negative than they will the positive.
Yeah, I think it's terrible. I think it's an abomination. I think the media has tried and convicted him, and I don't think there's any way that the man's ever going to get a fair trial, whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent. People have already made up their minds, and I don't see how 12 people are going to be objective about it.
We took a poll for this program tonight, and one of the questions we asked in that poll, and you'll see the results of this particular question up there on your screen if you take a look. Can O.J. Simpson get an impartial jury? 40% said yes, 56%, as you can see there, said no. Let me turn first of all to the lawyers. Mr. Black, people always have this concern whenever there is a case with a sort of high visibility. Perhaps no case in recent history has had this high a visibility, but explain why it either does or doesn't make much of a difference once you get into the courtroom and impanel a jury.
Oh, I disagree with that. I think it makes a startling difference.
No, I said does or doesn't.
Oh, okay. I think that in this case, the chances of him getting a fair trial are pretty slim. We'll give him a trial, I don't think it'll be a fair trial because jurors are going to go in there with opinions about this case, knowing all this evidence. You notice the young lady on the clip. She said, I watched the trial. There are people who thought he was on trial. This is only a preliminary hearing. And yet we've already come to verdicts. I don't see how this guy can get a fair trial.
And yet, Catherine, when people come into a court and when there is the process of voir dire where they're interviewed to see whether they will be jurors in the case, they're not asked whether they're familiar with the case. They're not asked if they know about the case. What is it that they are asked?
Well, actually, they are asked both of those questions.
But I mean, that would not disqualify them from sitting on the jury.
It's whether or not you can set aside what you know, come into the courtroom and decide based solely upon the evidence presented in the course of the trial. But the problem is, how many people do you know if you walked up to them and said, can you be fair? Would say no. Can you be impartial? Would say no, because inherently we believe we can be. We believe we could follow the court's instructions, set that aside, and listen only to what we hear. The truth is, not many people can do that. They try, and I think most juries do try, but most of them can't do that. And you hear over and over about arguments in the jury room. One juror will say, the judge said we can't talk about that, but you know there was something, and it happens all the time.
Larry? But that's why we have a jury system. It's the best one we could figure out.
But not when it's being tampered with by the media.
Oh, but Edward Bennett Williams, who is a great friend of mine and maybe arguably one of the great lawyers of this century, said when people get into a jury trial, they're fair. They listen to a judge, they follow instructions, most jury verdicts are correct. He thought you could take 12 people off the street, bring them in, and you could even have a prior opinion. You could set someone down who says, I think O.J. didn't do it. But I'm going to listen to the evidence. And if the evidence says he did do it, I'm going to vote him guilty.
Yeah, but Larry, Ed Williams was a great lawyer, but that's one of the times when he was wrong. And we're all wrong every once in a while, but I don't believe that at all. You know, they say
so you don't like the jury system?
Do you No, the system is you say you're going to put it aside. Where are you going to put it? You're going to tell me it's not going to be in your mind?
Donald Ray said a moment ago, not when the media is tampering with...
the jury system.
How is the media tampering with the jury system?
Because what is happening here, what this man is entitled to is to come into court with 12 jurors who can affirm to the court that he or she can presume O.J. Simpson is innocent.
Did the 4 police officers in the beating of Rodney King get a fair trial?
Well, are you talking about a fair trial or a trial that they won? I mean, we tried DeLorean in front of an unfair jury. We had jurors who said that they could not presume him innocent. But just because we won doesn't mean we got a fair trial. We had a burden that we had to assume, which we constitutionally and legally should not have had to assume.
Well, what other measure do we have of a fair trial but that everyone began with the assumption of guilt and yet 4 men walked out of there on a not guilty verdict?
Well, what we're trying to measure is whether the person was given the right shot going in. Just because if you're down in a hole and you fight your way up and you can win the case, you may have had any number of reasons why that happened. You may have been so innocent that you should never have even been brought to trial, which is what we think happened in DeLorean, what apparently some of the jurors thought happened in that case in Simi Valley. But the problem is you're entitled to...
John Mack.
But wait a minute. I cannot resist that trial in Simi Valley. That was not fair. It was racist. And I'll tell you something. I think there are some ingredients here with even implications for the media. As offensive as the outcome of that jury verdict was to me, look at this scenario. You have 12 people who lived in Simi Valley, so basically white suburban area of Los Angeles, a strong pro-police community. They watch on a regular basis the evening newscast, particularly at the local level, which all too often focuses on the sensationalist, focuses on violence. The usual picture they see is that of a young African-American man blowing somebody away. And these stereotypes are reinforced.
John, could I ask you to relate this to the O.J. Simpson trial?
So what I'm saying, what I'm suggesting is that when you talk about, well, back to your original question in terms of whether or not you can put together a jury that would have a fair, in which O.J. could get a fair trial, I'm not so sure that it's going to be difficult. I'm not sure that it's impossible. I think one important way to bring that about is to make sure that the jury, the trial remains wherever it is, and that you have a diversified group, and that the questioning, there's a very, that the prosecutors and the defense need to really, really do a careful job of checking
Let me
out
make one
people's
thing
rights
clear.
relations.
Donald, Catherine, and then Michael. Go ahead.
I'm not saying that I agree with the verdict in Simi Valley. What I'm saying is the jurors in Simi Valley came to the conclusion that that trial should not have been brought. The question is, does that make it a fair trial because that's what happened, because the jurors have been influenced one way or the other, or because the jurors have a bias one way or the other? That's not what a fair trial is. Just because the jurors believe that or come to a conclusion doesn't mean the defendant had a fair trial. And what's happening here is this man cannot get 12 jurors. Would you want a juror sitting on your case who said, I don't know what the O.J. Simpson case is about? That juror is not the kind of intelligent juror. He must be so out of touch with reality or lying to get on that case. Who would want him on the case?
There were a couple of people, I mean, just parenthetically, there were a couple of people like that in Oliver North's trial here in Washington who said exactly that, and they sat on the jury.
But to give the media a bit of a break, I started out as a prosecutor right out of law school and tried rapes and robberies and murders. And you went in there and did the voir dire on presumption of innocence. You said, how many in this room walked in and said, I wonder what she did? All the hands went up without any coverage, without any reporting on an everyday case before the courts. People walk in a courtroom and say, what did that person do? You've got to battle that in any trial. It's just, it's much more magnified with the electronic
I'm astounded that legal experts, I'm astounded that you are so cynical and skeptical about the jury system, particularly Roy Black. We just had this conversation over the William Kennedy Smith case. Remember the media feeding frenzy? And you won that case very handily.
Yeah, but let me follow up on what Don said. If the Miami Dolphins were given 14 points at the beginning of the game and played the 49ers and the 49ers won, was that a fair game? See, that's the problem. You can't take the result and say that was a fair trial.
Then why do you need a jury, or why do you need trials?
No, you need a jury.
People go in with any preconceptions. I think because what we see in trial after trial, and courts have reaffirmed this, that being on a jury is a very powerful experience, and that experience overwhelms those preconceptions. The issue here is whether the media have become, and the coverage, have become so excessive that the preconceptions will be so deep that it will be 14 points for Miami, and that now a fair trial
I don't understand something.
Can't take place.
That's exactly the right point. You know, Larry, I wonder if Edward Bennett Williams, were he alive today, and he died, what, 8 or 10 years ago, would say the same thing about taking 12 people off the street.
Maybe not.
The media environment, has changed dramatically since then.
Does anyone, none of us, nobody here was there that night, right? Correct?
Well, I wasn't.
Nobody here.
No, we got a real story for Bob Shapiro.
Well, the National Enquirer may have been there, but other than that, nobody here knows what happened. Is that correct? I don't know what happened that night. Can I judge that trial fairly? I know I could. Couldn't you?
Yes, I really believe I could.
Tom, could you sit on that jury tomorrow? Do you have a preconceived notion about this?
Well, I'm a reporter. I think all the lawyers would pick me on.
But it's
Do you know what happened that night?
Tom, it's a fair question, but let me pose the question just a little bit differently. What is it that you have seen in the media that you think would disqualify you as a juror? Anything?
It's not so much what I've seen in the media alone. It's what I've seen in the media and then people reacting to it. I know people.
Tell me what it is.
I know people who basically have been living the O.J. case, who talk about it all the time and have been watching nothing but O.J.
Does that mean you
what
know?
Is the opposite
so you would be
of that?
disqualified,
That they
but
know
you don't know
nothing?
who did it. You don't know. You don't have an opinion.
The issue
So
is
why
not
would
whether
you
he
be
can.
disqualified? Because you know, you've read a lot about it.
I'll answer that question.
The issue is
Let's
not
say
whether
you
he
get a
can
real judge on the case with some backbone who says that Fourth Amendment was violated when you jumped over the fence and went in there and suppresses the evidence of that glove. Are you going to forget about it?
Opinion.
But wait, the issue is not.
I have to listen to the judge's charge to me.
Are you going to forget about that
And the Supreme
glove?
Court can rule. I'm not supposed to. The judge tells me whether to forget or not. Wait a minute.
But the glove is not in evidence. He the judge now suppresses the evidence.
You disagree with the judge.
Janine Jackson has been. Hold it just a second. Janine Jackson has been sitting there quietly nodding and alternately shaking her head. Go ahead and talk.
I'm interested. I think it's an interesting discussion whether or not a fair trial is possible. I wonder if we actually need to say that the media is so bad that a fair trial is impossible before we can say that the media has done some bad things. Does it really have to get to that point? Do we have to require that judges and lawyers are muzzled because journalists can't restrain themselves from deciding what's a valid story and what isn't?
Now we're getting dicey. Now we're getting dicey.
Why does it have to get to that point?
Liberate the lawyers?
No. Hold on. I think we're onto a wonderful subject here, that the press ought to control itself, right? The media ought to control itself. Let us, on that provocative question, take a break, and we'll come back, and then Dick Wald is going to explain why we shouldn't do that.
Right.
This Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson, will continue in a moment.
Search. Search. What is it, boy?
Hey, I think we got something over here.
Good dog.
Frank said he'd really like to take a relaxing vacation this year. I've got just the place. If they could see you now out on a fun ship cruise, you're eating fancy food and doing what you choose. I'd like your friends back home to get a good look. I ask you, does Frank look relaxed or what? Take a 3, 4, or 7-day vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world. Honey, I just booked another week.
Great. In the race for Congress, he stands apart from the crowd. Harold Byrd. Born in rural McNairy County, he worked the family farm. Harold Byrd, raised on family values, faith, hard work. Harold Byrd, a farmer and small businessman, he's created hundreds of jobs. Harold Byrd. In Congress, he'll fight to crack down on welfare fraud, put gang leaders in jail, no pay raises, no perks. Harold Byrd for Congress, a breath of fresh air.
When it comes to value, Buick beats the imports hands down.
Oh, I see we still have some skepticism on some of our guests' faces.
Buick Regal has anti-lock brakes and a bigger V6 than Camry. Honda Accord doesn't even offer a V6.
You know, TV and radio is making a big deal out of this.
Yet Regal is priced about $2,500 less than Honda, $4,000 less than Camry.
I've never heard of such a thing. You have now.
See your better Buick dealer today.
Channel 2 News is on your side, bringing candidates for Tennessee governor together to discuss the issues. I'm John Siegenthaler. I'll be hosting a 2-hour live broadcast with Kerry Brock from the Freedom Forum First Amendment Center and Frank Sutherland from the Tennessean.
That's right, John. All month long, we've been collecting questions from the people of Middle Tennessee to ask the candidates.
And we hope you'll join us and our studio audience as candidates for Tennessee governor answer your questions.
The 94 Vote Town meeting live on Thursday, July 28th from 7 to 9 right here on Channel 2.
One day you can listen and you'll say, by God, I think the man did it. And the next day, depending on what they're presenting to the public, you'll say, well, I have my doubts. I know there's a balance here. It's up one day and down the next day. So you don't know what to believe on either side.
All right, we are back to the provocative question that was raised a couple of moments ago by Janine Jackson, and that is that perhaps the press needs to control itself. Now, I have no trouble with the concept of my controlling the National Enquirer. But I'm not sure that I want you, Mike, controlling Nightline.
Exactly, and that's the problem. I mean, we're not all the same. He wants to do journalism his way. Let's put everything that's news out in the front page in descending order. I want to do it my way. I want to do what people are interested in. And yet, the National Enquirer doesn't only do celebrity news. I mean, last year we won the American Cancer Society Award for Excellence in Journalism. Okay, but the point is that we all have agendas, and your agenda is one thing, and my agenda is something else. And part of my agenda, quite frankly, and really all of our agenda, is to make money for our publications and our TV stations and our radio stations.
See, that's the difference between the National Enquirer
no, it isn't.
and the LA Times.
The LA Times.
Let me finish.
You are not the owner of the LA Times, pal.
No, I'm not the owner of the LA Times.
And he's very interested in making
He doesn't
money.
tell me how to write my stories to make a profit.
Yeah, he may someday.
Well,
and you know that's happened.
And we're getting closer to that day. You said that I want everybody to do journalism my way. I don't. Let the National Enquirer do journalism its way. I don't want my newspaper to do journalism your way.
Good.
And what I'm talking about when I talk about restraint is that we should restrain ourselves. I don't want you to restrain Koppel, but I don't want Koppel to be playing on your terms.
Okay, well, now, wait a second. I said we were going to go to Dick Wald. I mean, first of all, there is sort of a presumption of guilt here on the part of the media in the sense that you seem to be presuming, Tom, that we don't restrain ourselves. I think we show a lot of restraint. And I think one of the mistakes that
in this case.
You're snickering.
It's not true.
You're snickering, Barnes.
Where's the restraint in this case?
We have stories we could publish today that believe me, by the New Yorker standards, we could go today with, and we're not.
There was a perfect point in this case where the press should have restrained itself.
Where?
Obviously, Larry keeps saying, this is a big story. Well, of course it's a big story. The first week was exactly, it should have been on the cover of all the news magazines. But the second week, that's when the press gets into attaching this spurious social significance to the case in order to keep writing about it. And the second week, the Newsweek cover was something like, America discovers spousal abuse. Well, America discovered spousal abuse years ago. We had The Burning Bed, the movie, and so on. Then we get to the third week, and we get to the question of race. Will that deny him of a fair trial? What happens when the press raises these questions as first spuriously, then they become social problems. That's what John Mack was referring to. The press dwells on this racial question, and it becomes a racial case rather than an individual case.
If you have good guests, like we haven't dwelled on racial. We have good guests.
Larry, hold on just a second. Dick Wald, you are responsible in many respects for telling us when we lose our moral compass here at ABC News. Can you just sort of satisfy everyone that there are times when indeed we do think about, not going overboard?
Every once in a while. Look, in the first place, the questions that you were just saying that are spurious are not spurious. Spousal abuse is serious.
I didn't say it wasn't serious. I just said it wasn't new.
And it shouldn't shouldn't only be covered when there's
For a person who doesn't report news, you have a great number of opinions about what is new and what is the news. Let me explain to you that we are in the business of mass daily journalism, all of us who are represented here. That business deals with what is interesting. By what we celebrate, by our celebrities, will you know us? And that's one of the things you do, try to know us. We, in the pursuit of this story, made, as far as I am aware, one mistake in reporting. One, we knew, for instance, that Mr. Cowlings in that car was driving a car with a man who had his passport and a large amount of cash. But we only had it from one source. We wouldn't let it on the air until we had it from two sources. So we didn't report it. We at ABC News got the lion's share of the ratings. Actually, that's not right. The lion's share is all. We just got the majority of the ratings. And we were responsible, we were accurate, and we were copious in our coverage. There is an elitist attitude that because it's interesting, it must be wrong. Because we do well with it, there must be something wrong with it. That because there are a lot of different outlets in this country, they must be restrained.
And to back up what he said, what the media brought up on spousal abuse was fair. For example, you mentioned we all knew about spousal abuse. We've had television shows and so on. And why didn't Hertz fire O.J. Simpson? Why did NBC keep him on? He pled guilty to, pled nolo contendere to it.
I don't know the answer to that.
Wasn't that a good story?
I will tell you.
Was it fair to ask Hertz?
I think the media used spousal abuse and then race as excuses to keep this story alive because it wanted
to ask Hertz Rent-A-Car why they kept him?
You don't need an excuse to keep the story alive. And we only
weeks on the cover.
But we don't need an excuse. But also, we only discuss whether we're covering something too much when it's interesting. We don't discuss it. Are we covering health care too much? Is that pushing other stories off the front page? We don't. This is the only time, and it's a very, it's a fairly elitist argument. And just to get back to the fair trial, can I just get back to one point that Roy may comment on, which is that O.J. may also get an unfair trial because of his celebrity. One of the things a defense attorney has to do is make the defendant sympathetic. And O.J. has 3 decades of typecasting in which he's been made out to be the good guy. And so he's got that going in. In the Menendez case, the defense had to make these spoiled brats lovable. And they did.
Alleged spoiled
brats.
brats.
These alleged spoiled brats, yes. Lovable, and they did. In this case, O.J. already has that reputation.
But look what happened. That's true. And he deserved it because that was his reputation. And Gil Garcetti had a press conference and he said, I'm out to destroy that reputation so I can help convict him. It's not fair for the prosecution to use the media to destroy a popular person to make him easier to convict. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Let me just jump in for a second. Janine, come on back in. You started this thing and then everybody sort of leaped all over the concept and you haven't had a chance to really explain what you were talking about.
Well, I think the issue is it's being made out to be an argument between the story should be covered, the story should not be covered. That's not the argument. Of course the story should be covered.
No, the story should be covered responsibly.
And in appropriate quantity, you know. I think it's not elitist to say we interrupt this story to tell you that there are no new developments in the O.J. Simpson case is bad journalism. I don't think that's elitist to say sometimes it crosses the line and becomes clearly something where they're committed to covering the story, so they're going to cover the story whether there are valid developments or not, you know.
I think it was a net gain to society to cover the preliminary hearing and push off One Life to Live. I think there is a question...
So long as it wasn't O.J.'s life that was pushed off.
Right, yeah.
Well, and there were decisions being made, and I think there was also something about the live footage which was compelling for people. I would like to say I don't think people need to apologize for finding the story compelling, but journalists have a responsibility not to abandon their standards in a rush for ratings, which I think is clearly going on here, where people are saying, you know...
There is one other major issue that I touched upon a moment ago. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, probably the country is more divided along race lines when it comes to judging how the O.J. Simpson case is being covered and what the impact of that is going to be than any other lines at all. When we come back, I'd like to talk about that and have you respond to it. Back in a moment.
This Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson, will return after these messages.
You know you can get salmonella poisoning from bacteria in undercooked food, like some chicken or fish. But you can also get it if that bacteria has been spread around the kitchen. That's why there's new Lysol antibacterial kitchen cleaner. As it cleans, it kills the bacteria and keeps them from spreading, which may help keep you from getting sick. Get new Lysol antibacterial kitchen cleaner.
Advanced formula Rid-X digests even paper, grease, cuts the rate of buildup up to 30%, and it's still safe for pipes. Rid-X, super digestion for more backup protection.
If you buy a Honda Accord DX for over $14,000, chances are you'll find a few things missing. Like this. That's right. That 14 grand Accord DX doesn't even come with a radio, not to mention all this other stuff. Unlike the Achieve a Special Edition from Oldsmobile, which has all that and more for only $13,995. No problem. It's your money.
With all the junk that comes in the mail these days, it's important not to overlook something really special. Your pre-approved Discover Card application. Just sign it and return it. There's no annual fee, and it's the only way to get the Smart Rate program, which lets you lower your own interest rate. So you can buy something you've always wanted. Watch your mail. It pays to Discover, the card that pays you back.
Hi, Gary Willingham. To celebrate the second annual Vinny Pro Celebrity Invitational, August the 1st and 2nd, you'll have a chance to win this car. Come by the dealership, guess the correct number, and win the car.
I'm Save More Bucks with your new Toyota Tercel. Only $79.88 after $1,200 cash back or 3.9% APR financing.
And be sure to come by Toyota of Gallatin and see if you can win this new Toyota Camry.
We're open extended hours, just 10 minutes past Rivergate. We'll meet you at 3 in the morning if we know you're coming.
Toyota of Gallatin. Call us now.
The rugged beauty of the Canadian Rockies provide the perfect backdrop for the next day of discovery.
Join the Discovery Singers for a musical special that explores the peace we can experience when we learn what it means to be still. For the Discovery Singers and their special, Be Still My Soul, join us for the next Day of Discovery.
Sunday mornings, 9 to 9:30.
By your grace set free.
This ABC News Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson continues.
Now we have a new angle. It's all racist.
Very excessive and very racist.
I don't think it's like a black-white thing. I think it's a celebrity thing.
I'm going to get in trouble for this, but let's take the same scenario and just change the key player. Let's put maybe a Sylvester Stallone or someone in. The same thing would happen. This country is just asphyxiated with celebrities.
Let me also add one other quote here. This is one from Linda Bird Harden, who is the Executive Secretary of the Virginia NAACP. She was contrasting the coverage of the Simpson and Jeffrey Dahmer stories, saying, how many people of African descent do you have to kill to get that kind of coverage? The Simpson news coverage helps to feed the stereotype that men of color are violent and want to kill white people when in actuality we are killing ourselves. John Mack, do you resonate to that? Do you agree with that observation?
Well, I think that as I said earlier, it's a problem, Ted. In the O.J. Simpson situation, I'll tell you, at first, while I knew that race was a factor, whenever you have an African-American man killing two white people, an American woman was his former wife, there's a degree, but I did not feel that race was a dominant issue. I thought that O.J.'s celebrity status was really the key issue and got everybody going. I think that and quite frankly, O.J., let's face it, he was right after motherhood and apple pie in terms of being a hero across the board. He was not limited to just being a black hero. As a matter of fact, O.J. was not that closely tied in. So initially, I don't think the African-American community was that shook up. They figure, well, the criminal justice system has been unfair. There's a built-in paranoia there. But I think now we're beginning to see people choosing sides because he is becoming the object of potential. He's symbolic now of another black man being taken down the tubes.
But if he killed two black people.
If I may for just 1 second, what is startling, Janine, is the infinitely smaller percentage of African Americans in this country who have been polled who believe that he is guilty. Now, compared to whites who were polled.
I think those polls are, O.J. Simpson is not a typical defendant, and what I think those polls are reflecting are the very real doubts and fears that African Americans have about our ability to get fair treatment from the criminal justice system and also fair treatment from the media. And those fears are very well-founded. I think I've not seen a great amount of racist coverage at all. In fact, I think the Time magazine cover was excruciatingly poor judgment and a great argument for having more minorities in the newsroom.
Just tell our audience what you're talking about, then we'll have Margaret Carlson respond.
This was the cover in which the picture, the mugshot of O.J. Simpson was altered artistically to darken his features, to make him look sort of more heavily bearded. And my point is, the underrepresentation of minorities in decision-making roles in newsroom staffs really shows itself in these kind of judgment calls. Had there been someone in that room to say, look, fellas, however you intend this image is going to be offensive to a lot of people, I think that poor judgment might have been avoided. The intentions are not what's important here. Someone needed to be there to say, you know, you may be thinking art. That's not what a lot of people are going to think when they see this picture. And I think it's a real argument for increased amounts of minorities in the newsroom.
Margaret, the folks over at Time have, I assume, agonized over this a lot in the last few weeks.
Agonized and apologized, actually. I wasn't in the room, but there are black editors at Time, and I'm sure there were some blacks in the room. I think this was one of those, you shouldn't be making decisions at 4 in the morning. But also, competition to be different from Newsweek was driving that. And I think photo illustrations are not a good idea anyway. But I wanted to ask John, if 2 blacks were killed, don't you think do you have a different view then? I mean, I think it would be the same coverage. It's coverage of O.J. Simpson going against type. I mean, here's somebody we thought was one way, and he's accused of doing something we can't imagine, and it doesn't matter to whom he did it.
No, I think it had a little extra pizzazz. I mean, let's face it, we got to be real about certain things. Yes, O.J.'s celebrity status clearly made it a big-time story. But I think the fact that you had the interracial angle there kind of juiced it, and initially, there's a tendency on the part of, I think the media, quite frankly, I think generally speaking, has been pretty responsible in terms of not playing the race card. We did have a local exception or two to the rule. For example, a local television station there had this big headline, and this reporter came on jamming Gil Garcetti because he had not requested a venue change from the downtown Los Angeles court system, where you were assured of the possibility of a more diversified jury, moving it to a Santa Monica, basically white, jury, so that the implication was that only whites could be fair and objective. So, I think that was the thing that began to get people's attention in Los Angeles. Clearly, though, bottom line, it was excitement, it was interesting. People were excited about it. I think it's the rush, though, to beat the competition that people get loose with the truth and the facts.
Jeffrey Turbin.
These cases are not tried in general. They're tried in specific places about specific people. And we're talking about Los Angeles here, which is the land of Rodney King. And no one, and that taint is not going to disappear from the trial, especially since it appears at least one of the officers involved does have a racist history. That is going to be a part of this case. It was a part from the beginning, and it's going to be an even bigger part as this case develops.
We are down essentially to the last few minutes of this program, and I would like in our closing moments if we can sort of come back to what ought to be the central issue, and that is what we in the media have been doing wrong, if indeed we have. I've heard the wretched excess charge, but there is also a tendency to talk about the media as though all of us do the same thing all the time. We tend to tar with one brush, and yet even represented in this fairly small group is a significant palette of colors in the media. And I'm just wondering if each of you would favor us with your thoughts on what, if anything, I mean, it's a dangerous thing to tamper with the way we cover stories in this country, but what, if anything, would you have us? Tom, you write about this kind of thing all the time. You're critical, but okay, tell us. Other than a general statement like a little more self-examination, if you will, ladies and gentlemen, what would you have us do?
I think the important thing is for the so-called serious press in this country to remember that its primary job is to help people survive in a self-governing democracy, and that means, as I said in the beginning, putting information in the context and in order of significance so that they can chart their way through their lives. The problem with the coverage is that all these different colors in the palette are merging into one sort of bright yellow, and for the so-called serious press, that is ultimately going to be suicidal because there will be no more distinctions.
Michael, you said the dread word before, say it again. We're talking about money, we're talking about profit. If we talk about everything blending into one, it's because we're all afraid of losing the piece of the pie.
It's absolutely true, and anybody who tells you, first of all, people, somebody here said everything should be read with a grain of salt. That goes for the National Enquirer, goes for the New York Times. All of us have been wrong at times.
A couple of grains of salt in your case, if you don't mind.
Perhaps. But we've been very proud of our coverage in this particular case. We didn't have bloody ski masks and all of these egregious mistakes. We were correct in the information on the autopsy, which no one had before we had, and so forth. But the point is, I'm a great believer in the First Amendment. I think it's called the First Amendment for a reason. I mean, if you don't have that one first, I don't think anything else can really logically follow. And I think if you just try to do a good, accurate job and be a little bit careful about you know, just consider when you write a story what you're going to do to somebody, which is tough to do because sometimes you hurt people when you publish a story you don't even mean to. Furman has already said that he will have no career after this, and I believe him, whether he planted the glove or didn't plant the glove, because this has been brought out.
Dick Wald.
Well, there is an assumption that the press is going to hell in a handbasket. And that assumption has been prevalent in this country certainly since the 1840s, but is prevalent now. And I would just point out to you that there is not in the United States anywhere that I can recollect a place where yellow journalism drove out good journalism. Your newspaper in your city exists and thrives because it beat out the yellow journalism equivalents. Our news programs, all of the networks, compete for the high ground. That's where we think our audience will be. Your newspaper makes more money than his because your newspaper has the respect of its community. There is an economic incentive that we don't talk about toward being good. There is, in all of our lives, a reasonable sense that the better drives out the worse. We are engaged in a process of mass journalism that engages both the interest and the importance of our times. When we deal with something interesting, it doesn't mean that the importance has gone away. And we are able, by gathering an audience, by talking to them sensibly, and by being responsible, to be good citizens and to make money. That's a big piece of our life.
Let me just get a couple of other people in. Go ahead, Fred.
That sounds great, but something dramatic has happened in journalism. It's changed very much in the last few years. You know, Tom was right. He said, by what the press covers and the amount in which it covers it, it tells people what is significant in their lives, what is significant in the world. And what has the press told us in recent years what is significant? The O.J. Simpson case, the Menendez case, the Bobbitts, Michael Jackson and young boys, the Willie Smith case, which was carried live on CNN. Those things compared to legislation in Washington.
Wait. Let me just add to your list, Fred. And Bosnia, and Haiti, and healthcare, and
in a previous, the coverage of those other things.
All of those things. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned
Jeffrey.
earlier in the program the Oliver North case. Well, in a previous life, I was one of the prosecutors in that case.
I remember.
And I watched 12 jurors sit there for 14 days deliberating in that case, and they had every influence in the world upon them from the press and everywhere else. And they came out 14 days later, or 12 or whatever it was, with tears in their eyes, having deliberated on the evidence, and I think rendered a very fair, divided verdict on the charges. And I think they did a hell of a job, and I think the jury in the O.J. Simpson case will do a good job. And I think the point is that people have the ability to filter. Jurors do, good and bad journalism, and facts in a courtroom, and facts presented on television. And I think we should be concerned about our role here, but people aren't quite as dumb as we think, and I think they can separate out the good from the bad.
Go ahead, John.
I would appeal to those of you who are the responsible journalists, if you will, in organizations. The ABCs, the NBCs, the CNNs, et cetera, and the Ted Koppels and the Larry Kings and others, to maintain the high ground. It's very important that you not allow yourselves to, as people start nipping at your at the heels in this ratings game, it's very important, in my judgment, not to just copycat and rationalize. I hear too many people rationalize and defending and explaining why they did that story and didn't maybe get a second source.
John, let me interrupt you only because we've got another 30 seconds. Donald Ray, why don't you take the last?
I think that aside from what everybody else has said, I think that the media must know when they have a titillating story and they're doing it to titillate, and they should question that. You know, there's a good story that comes out of a black man who was charged in this case, which is that a black man who is charged with murder, a capital murder, is more likely to be executed than a white man in this country by an outrageous degree. That's a good story. Why should that story not be brought up in this case? Why isn't the O.J. case a springboard for that kind of story as opposed to the titillating kind of story?
Trust me, before this case is over, it will have been. I'll be back with a closing thought in just a moment.
This Nightline Viewpoint, the media and O.J. Simpson, brought to you by Maytag, will continue in a moment.
Ever ask yourself, why should you have to wash all the dishes before you wash the dishes? With a Maytag Jet Clean dishwasher, you don't have to. Its 43 powerful jets scrub every surface, it filters the food particles and disposes. Maytag is the dishwasher that asks the question, who needs you?
Where have I heard that?
Maytag, the dependability people.
I'm an eye doctor because I like to help people see better. LensCrafters does a great job in helping that happen. Can you read that?
Uh-huh.
Good. We provide an extremely thorough eye exam. I always check for glaucoma and cataracts, and with 1 hour service, we can almost immediately see the results of our work. I enjoy the responsibility of seeing the same people year after year. They look at me as being their doctor. That's part of the good feeling you get when you do this type of work.
LensCrafters, helping people see better, 1 hour at a time.
Here's an inside look at Ford Motor Company's latest achievement. Our worldwide team has created a car for the world, with safety features years ahead of today's safety standards. A computerized transmission that adjusts to any driving condition, and the Duratec V6 engine that can go 100,000 miles without a tune-up. World-class features in a more affordable class of car, and soon you can drive one yourself. Ford Contour and Mercury Mystique, coming September.
Hi, Gary Willingham. To celebrate the second annual Vinny Pro Celebrity Invitational, August the 1st and 2nd, you'll have a chance to win this car. Come by the dealership, guess the correct number, and win the car.
We've got your 94 Toyota truck. It's a Vinny special, only $79.88 after $1,200 cash back or 3.9% APR financing.
And any used or pre-title program car priced at $8,000 or more is $0 down and only $89 a month for the first 3 months.
Remember, we'll meet you at 3 in the morning if we know you're coming.
Toyota of Gallatin.
Call us now.
Hi, I'm Lori Morgan, speaking on behalf of the Drug and Alcohol Council of Middle Tennessee. I'm no stranger to the disease of alcoholism, but